Cool. All right, we're on. That took like too long. Hey guys, happy Sunday. Hope y'all are doing good today. Hello, everybody. Hey, everybody on TikTok. Hello. Hey, Victor. All right, happy Sunday. Yes, happy Sunday to you too. Hope y'all are doing good. Actually, there we go. Wanted to reduce that way. Cool. Yeah, that way it didn't look overwhelming to the video for Facebook. Cool. Awesome. Hey everybody. Hello. Happy Sunday. Sorry guys, no readings today. This is our sermon day. So we do a sermon every single Sunday. So we talk about spirituality. We talk about some lessons that we can learn about. I use I use inspirational quotes and things that I read throughout the week as my premise for it. So let me bring up what I was reading this morning because I want to talk about that. Let's see. Okay. And okay. So there's a quote that I saw this morning that I wanted to talk to you guys about. That was a really good starting point for our conversation today. So that's what I'm pulling up here. There we go. That's it right there. Okay. I think that's it. That's it right there. Perfect. Okay. You have to bring up the okay, cool. All right, so today I want to talk about the topic of today's conversation or today's sermon is going to be about defining source. And you can use source as like interchangeable with God. You can use source as interchangeable with the universe. It just depends on what language you choose to use. But I was reading something this morning that really got me thinking about this and got me thinking back to my own experiences when it comes to spiritual ideology and the ideas that we form around God or the ideas we form around source. So I was reading a book this morning. It's called the name of the book is called Falling into Grace. And there was a section in the beginning of the book that the author goes into. So I'm going to read that, and then from there we'll kind of go into our conversation, okay? So she writes, the great spiritual teacher Krishnamurti once said, when you teach a child that a bird is named bird, the child will never see the bird again. What they'll see is the word bird. That's what they'll see and feel. And when they look up in the sky and see that strange winged being take flight, they'll forget that what is actually there is a great mystery. They'll forget that they really don't know what it is. They'll forget that thing flying through the sky is beyond all words, that it's an expression of the immensity of life. It's actually an extraordinary and wondrous thing that flies through the sky. But as soon as we name it, we think we know what it is. We see bird and we almost discount it. A bird, cat, dog, human, cup, chair, house, forest, all of these things have been given names. And all of these things lose some of their natural aliveness once we name them. Of course, we need to learn these names and form concepts around them. But if we start to believe that these names and all the concepts we form around them are real, then we've begun the journey of becoming entranced by the world of ideas. So, and I'll stop there because that was the part that I was really intrigued by. when I was first developing my own spirituality, right? I came from a Catholic background. So my entire family is a traditional Catholic family, Latin family or Hispanic family. And so it was going to church every single Sunday. I did my first communion. I went to catechism. I mean, I did the traditional Catholic path for connecting with God or having that relationship with God. And in the course of my own experience with that, I had a lot of questions, and some of my own personal experiences with having questions about things that were never properly answered in the church was one of the things that really triggered me into asking more questions and wondering, like, well, who's gonna know? Who knows the answers? Who has the information that I'm looking for? I remember in catechism in class once, I had asked the teacher, because we were talking about Noah's Ark, and we had talked about the animals, and there was pairs of each animals and so forth. And I thought to myself, well, that's a lot of animals. And so I asked the teacher, how did all those animals fit in the boat? And she says, we really don't know how that happened. We have to have faith that God made that happen for Noah. It's like, okay. And then I also thought about the food. Don't they need food to survive on the boat? They're going to be on the boat for 40 days and 40 nights. Don't they need food? Is that boat going to carry enough food for everybody as well? So all of these just very basic, standard, common sense questions came into my mind when I was in school. So as I got older and I still questioned, I still wondered, but I never really went down that path too far, just because there's a fear that's built in. Most of us who come from a Christian or a Catholic background, the fear of God and the fear of damnation, eternal damnation, the fear of hell, the fear of all these things are indoctrinated into you from a very early age. I definitely was indoctrinated and conditioned to be afraid. And even to this day, sometimes when I'm online and I see some posts from family members and so forth, instead of trying to help the person who is struggling, who is expressing themselves online, instead of the person being helped with kindness or compassion or being given an explanation, even just saying, I don't know, but I'm here for you. Even just that. Instead, the response is, no, you better not do that, because God is an angry, vengeful, vindictive God, and he will hurt you. And I was like, wow. And it's just a very different take and spin on the divine, on source, on God. So when I began to discover myself, and when I realized that I was gay and LGBT, and that in itself immediately triggered me to question everything, because one of the very first conversations I had with a family member, when I mentioned to them, I read something somewhere that the reason why I might be gay is because I came in with a choice to have an experience from this perspective. And so I programmed this experience into my life path so that I could understand through this unique perspective, through this unique human condition, and that it would help my soul, and it would help me to gain knowledge and understanding and to feel more of a connection to God. And the response I got back from the family member when I mentioned this to them, that I had read this, was, I think you're just hearing what you want to hear, and that may not be the truth. And people who are gay or people who practice that lifestyle, go to hell, or they're supposed to, not be going to heaven. So when I got that response and that answer, it shifted something in me, and it caused me to question everything at that point, because I was like, well, that's a very fear-based mindset. That's a mindset that is coming from a place where I'm a mistake. But if I'm a mistake, how can I be a mistake if God doesn't make mistakes? How can I exist if I'm not supposed to exist? By just the sheer, if you were to think of God as like this old man sitting in a chair somewhere up in the clouds, and he's like, damn it, I messed that one up. Okay, well, he has a chance to fix his life and to choose the right decision, and then I'll forgive him. Why would just the mere idea that I'm not supposed to exist automatically should nullify my existence, right? If there was a God that was an old man in a chair somewhere, the moment that I'm not supposed to do something, the intention or that mind of God, the idea that something's not supposed to be, automatically should correct it, because automatically whatever God wants is. So if you think of it that way, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why would things be allowed to exist if God didn't want them to exist, or they go against God? If they go against God, automatically that means that that's something God doesn't control. So that's already an issue. And then if it is something God can control or controls, why does it exist if it's not supposed to exist? Because if it's not supposed to exist, then just not supposed to is a preference of God, which automatically should resolve that or correct that or fix that and make it different, right? So I had all of these basic questions that just were not going away. And I thought to myself, you know what? I think I need to have a more personal conversation with God. And I read a book by Neil Donald Walsh, which was that was the title of the book, Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. It's a really good book. You can check it out. But it was very interesting, and it got me to think and think and think. And what I've realized, and after I decided to pull away from my Catholic faith, I started to look into other religious beliefs. I went and looked into Buddhism. I looked into some of the ancient religions of the East. I looked into all sorts of different foreign ideas of God. And ultimately, it came back to the same thing. And everywhere I went and all the research that I had done and studying that I was doing, it brought me back to the same place, me. Brought me back to where I'm at in my path and in my journey to connect with Source, to connect with God. And what I've realized over all these years is that there's no disconnect. There is nothing that exists that is not meant to exist. All things exist, and all things are supposed to be. And so none of us are mistakes. None of us are damaged goods. None of us are unworthy of life. We're all worthy to exist. We're all worthy of love. We all deserve to be here. And when I accepted that first truth, and I call that the first truth, when I accepted the first truth, that rang true within me. Even when I first read it and I saw it, I was like, that feels right. That feels true. That feels like it's supposed to be. And when you accept that first truth, you deserve to exist. You are worthy of love. And you have a direct connection with God or with Source or the divine. At that point, it was more about understanding that. What did that mean? What does that entail? What does that have to do with my life path and who I'm supposed to be in the world? And it has really revolutionized the way I think of God, the way I think of the divine. And the word God is such an old and ancient word, but it also is it's a word that is limiting, because when you operate from a place of there's you, which is something small and insignificant, and then there's God, this being that is all controlling, automatically there is a disconnect there. There is a difference between you and that. And when you accept the idea that all things exist that are meant to exist, so if it's here, if it's present, it's supposed to be, and all things are a part of God, if you do that, then this ideology, this mindset of there's us, this insignificant little thing that isn't really that significant, and then there's God, that doesn't work anymore. That idea doesn't work anymore, because it automatically, there's a big separation there. What it says is that you're less than, and this is more than, this is all controlling and you have no control. It's a very disempowering idea and thought. So when I decided to just let that go and not hold on to that structure of God or that structure of the divine, I no longer even felt the need to call God God. I still call God God to this day because it's an easy term for people to understand. But now with people becoming awakened to their greatness and their beauty and just the significance of their life, of their experience, of their perspective, as people begin to awaken, they realize also that the idea and term God is a very old one that doesn't really fit as well. And so now we have new terms. Now we have new words. We have people who say source. Source is a new one, which is a really good one to start with. We have, the divine. We have, and it just depends on what religious background you have, but there will be different names for God, Lord, etc. Jesus, the idea of Jesus being God. So all of these words have come up as descriptions or as representations of this experience. But none of them will ever feel perfect or right, because none of them are. if we were to think of ourselves as a part of creation, right? Look at the world around us. We look at the trees. We look at what we create with our hands and with our minds. That's all part of a creation. The animals outside, all part of a creation. Everything is a part of creation. And if we were to think of ourselves as like birds with the mind of a bird, the mind of a bird is very limited to its experience. It flies, it collects food, it has to travel depending on the season. It nurtures its young, it builds nests, it mates. So its life focus or its intention here is very limited to that unique experience. There may be variations of that with different birds, but for the most part, the essential bird, just the basic, bird that you would see out and about, like a sparrow or whatnot, that's a basic way of living. It's a very in sync way of living. It's living and experiencing in the way that it's designed to. So if we try to explain great philosophy to a bird, if we had a bird sitting in front of us and we try to explain some things to it, it may not comprehend, it may not grasp the enormity of creation. It may not understand the atom. It may not understand what causes the seasons, why there's stars that move in the sky. It may not understand any of those things, but it knows it to exist and it knows it to be. So we here in our form, we're no different than the bird, because we are very limited in perspective, and we are very human, as being in the human condition and coming from the human perspective, we're very human. And because we're very human, we have limitations in this form and from that perspective. So it is very arrogant for us to think that we have all the answers, that we can possess all the answers, that we can know all the answers. We are definitely in sync with everything. We have a connection to everything. Everything is interconnected. I call it collective consciousness is what it is. We're all interconnected to each other from an unconscious state or from a state of energetic being and vibration. So we're all connected to each other. There's no real separation. The only separation that truly exists are the ideas of separation that we use to our advantage here in the physical world, because it gives us a chance to have a life and to experience things that are beneficial, that are relevant for our own purposes. But when you try to encompass the perspective of God or source, if you think of it as infinite consciousness, infinite mind, infinite, etc., at that point, there's just no way to know it all. There's no way to grasp it all. There's no way to receive it all. But you still can receive quite a bit. You still can understand quite a bit. You still can connect and grasp quite a bit. So even though we're limited, even though we have very unique experiences in this form, we still have access to a lot. And what I've discovered over many years is that if I want to know something or understand something, I just need to ask God directly. I ask Source. I'll say, hey, and I don't think of Source as this authoritative power that I should be afraid of. I think of Source as like a BFF. It's my BFF. And I'm like, hey, kind of wondering about this. I'm not sure what I should do about this, and I pose the question. I may not get an answer right away. Sometimes I do, sometimes because of what I can do. Sometimes I'll hear it in my mind through thoughts and through a coalescing of energy and information. But sometimes the information comes to me through example, through experience. So I may ask about a specific issue. And then in that week, I'll have 2 or 3 or 4 separate examples that are answers to that question. And if we listen and if we work on listening and being aware and being present, we can receive more information and more understanding and more knowledge. We can have a more profound relationship with the divine. And I think this is where it is very important that it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you came from or what your background is. It doesn't matter what your family believes. None of that matters, because those are all labels. Those are all words that reduce the miraculous experience of Source. So whether you believe in God or not doesn't matter, but there is a consciousness, a presence. There is a witness to life, to creation, that we all get to be a part of, that we're all being used in the form of expression. We're all just, we're all fruit that are being bared from the branch of the tree of life, which is the tree of God or the tree of creation. So if you accept the idea that we aren't separate, if you accept the idea that what maybe we think about God or source is limited to our experience and our perspective, and that is still limiting because we are not God in that grander sense of it. We are versions of the divine that can conceptualize and understand from that perspective. But if you accept the idea that there is no limitation to source, and we do have the ability to understand more, and if you don't keep yourself from receiving those gifts of truth and knowledge and wisdom, then your understanding of why you're here will change. Your experience in why you're here will change. The reasons why you do the things you do now will change. The things that you care about in your life, that will change. All of these things change when you allow yourself to expand into the grandest way of understanding or conceptualizing or receiving that information, that knowledge, that connection with source. Think of it like shoes. Every religion is like a pair of shoes. Some religions think that they are just the cream of the crop. They think they're the Gucci's or the whatever. Some religions might just be, a few sandals. Some religions might be Skechers, old. It's an old brand. Some religions might operate as if they're Jordans, but they're all different varieties of shoes, and they all do the same thing essentially. If you put on a pair of shoes, they protect your feet to allow you to walk the walk. So when you think of religion can also act this way. It can act as a type of protection, but the protection is based in ideas and beliefs and thoughts, and you operate within that system to understand and to experience creation, to experience the divine through that form. But some shoes don't always fit right after some time. Some shoes you outgrow, and that's okay. We're designed to evolve. We're designed to grow. We're designed to have to change up the pair of shoes that we wear from time to time. We're designed to do that. So it's okay if we get to a place in our life where we look at who we are, we look at what we've gone through, and the beliefs that we were taught, who we were conditioned to be based on our families or our religious background. It's okay if we suddenly decide that the shoes don't fit anymore. And maybe it's time to upgrade to a different pair of shoes. Don't look for a perfect fit, because that's what I tried doing. And you can definitely find other belief systems and religious beliefs out there and faiths that might fit well, but it's still limiting, because if you get so attached to that system, you still limit yourself within that system. You still put yourself in a box. You still confine yourself to a pair of shoes that you at some point are going to outgrow no matter what. And we're always outgrowing the shoes that we wear. Or we're wearing them out. So at some point, you might outgrow those beliefs and those ideas, and that's okay. If that happens, upgrade again. Step it up and upgrade to the next level of understanding. But give yourself a chance to have that one-on-one and to have that experience, that direct, unique experience with Source, because it will reveal itself. It'll show itself to you. There are reasons why people have experiences where they see like the Virgin Mary, or they have a vision of God in the form of Jesus, because if that's their background, or they came from a mindset that used that system, God revealed itself in the form that that person could accept, not in its truest form. So if someone came from a background where they studied the Tao and all of that, then they may have a different experience for what they would assume would be Source or the divine. And so God is going to present itself. It's like Play-Doh. It's going to present itself however you're willing to accept it. And if you are only accepting it through a box or through a specific lens, then that is how it will come. And it will show up in that way, in that form, and that will be your experience. But if you don't limit it and you allow it to just be and to coalesce in its truest, most grandest form, you'll always be open for more. And it will always expand beyond what you thought you knew. So when you get to a place where you're like, okay, I know everything, I've got everything down, I figured it all out, the universe, God, Source will be like, oh, I've got some more for you, because you think you got it, but I got some more for you. And it will continue to come in and enrich you further and fulfill you in ways that you may not have expected. But don't limit yourself. Don't put yourself in a box. And it's okay if you want to experience different systems, just to help yourself grasp things in a different way than you would have from the faith that you came from. Now, sometimes there are people who, they don't need to upgrade. They don't feel the need to expand into grander ideas about source or God or the universe. They're okay being in the box. And for some people, that box is safe. That box feels fine. That box gives them comfort. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's saying you should have to change. But don't limit yourself if you feel the need to change, because there is a calling, there is a summoning that is happening within you that you may not recognize as the calling of source to you to understand more, to receive more. And if you do not move forward with that calling and you accept the invitation, you limit yourself to an experience, and then you will be bound to that mindset and that perspective, and you remain in a state that is limiting going on and going forward. So that doesn't mean that there's, again, nothing wrong with living in a box if the box comforts you. You know, there are certain things that I still eat today that I don't believe I should be eating, but they comfort me. They provide me with a sense of connection to my upbringing and to how I was raised and to my family and good memories. And so I may consume it even if I know that I shouldn't, because it's probably not the best thing to eat, but I enjoy and appreciate it. And so, but I keep it in perspective, and I don't allow myself to fall into the shadow of that thing, not being overwhelmed, not being controlled, not being dominated. It's one thing to allow yourself to use a system. It's another thing to completely be controlled by it. And you never want to be controlled by a system or by a religious belief. You want to use it as the tool that it is meant to be, as the shoe that it is meant to be, to get you somewhere, not necessarily to keep you from moving forward or to keep you in a state that is not going to bring you what you desire or what you need in this lifetime. So don't limit yourself. Give yourself a chance to have a unique, direct experience with the divine, with source. Ask for understanding. Ask for it. Ask for it. Don't be afraid to ask for it, to challenge it if you even need to sometimes. It's okay, because in doing so, what you do is you rise up to the level of, I'm worthy of an answer. I deserve to understand. So I ask and demand that. And all you're doing is asking it of yourself, because we are all divine. We're all source and form. So you're asking it of yourself. And the moment that you step into that power and into that place of completeness with the understanding that you are God in form, it unlocks things in this reality and in this world that you might not experience, because you would have remained in the level of fear and you would have stayed in the box, not questioning and not desiring to be and know more beyond that point. Okay. All right, so let's go through some of these questions here. I want to see what you guys are asking about. Let's see. And by the way, no personal readings, y'all. This is just this is our sermon time on Sunday. So I do this every Sundays. So no readings for y'all today. Sorry about it. Okay, let's see. Here, I'm using like a different system to I had to set it up differently today because I got my new thing and I was like, okay, I was trying to play with it, trying to figure it out. Let's see. There we go. All right, I had to block somebody to get them out of there so people could have. Let's see. Okay. It's going over here. And when it comes to using the word, when it comes to using God, the word God, as the name of God, it really is. God is just a very basic term, and you can use many different terms. You can use different names if you want to. It just depends on what you desire or what works for you. Some people will make up a name just because it helps them to feel more of that connection. For some people, they don't need to call it a name. They just need to refer to it as source or as the divine and whatnot. So it just depends on what works for you or what you feel the connection to. Yes, nature. When you think of nature, because nature is very, I believe, based off just of the experiences that I've had, I believe that when we are going through our life and we're having experiences with nature and we pay attention, because nature is a very good representation of the inner workings of the divine. In other words, people always want to understand what's the driving force behind source or creation. What's behind it all? What's happening behind the scenes? And everything is in plain sight. Everything is made in plain sight. And so when you pay attention to the world around you, to the physical universe, to our natural experience with Mother Nature and Earth and so forth, you can get a good idea about the way the universe operates, the way that everything works together and cooperates together. And there's always representations. You'll always see repeating patterns, and pay attention to the patterns. It's one thing that I do with my work as a psychic and a medium. Whenever I'm doing a reading for someone and I'm tuning into something and something starts to show up in several different ways, I pay attention to the repeating pattern, because the repeating pattern gives you an indicator of what's behind it all, or what's going on, or what's the point. So if you look at Mother Nature, if you pay attention to nature and to the element, there's repeating patterns that exist, and they will be found in the largest structures and then in the smallest forms. And you'll see these repeating patterns over and over and over again. So, just thinking of the planetary system and planets, and the planets go around the sun, and then you have the moons going around the planets. If you were to look at different protons and neutrons, they look like planetary systems. So you have all of these variations of the same concepts, the same ideas, and they're just repeating patterns that are helping you to understand some things. So when I think of source or the divine or creation, I think of a sphere. For me, it's a circular sphere. That's why I think the circle is important for me, because it's a representation of many things. It's a representation of cycles. We operate within existence, within a reality of cycles. We also, everything, believing in karma, and what goes around comes around, or what you put out you get back. There's always a completion. There's always a beginning and an end to everything, and there's always a rotation. And then spherical. And so if you were to think of the point of the idea of understanding and knowledge, and you start from one point and you go out, I believe it would look like a sphere, because it's going out everywhere simultaneously. When I think of the soul, I think of a sphere. When I think of the spirit, I think of a sphere. Interestingly enough, when I see spirits or I see their energy, I don't see them as people, and I actually see them as spheres or little sparkles of light, but they're small spheres of light. So I see them as that. And so it's just a repeating pattern over and over again, and you encounter that over and over again, all these repeating patterns. And sometimes people will put that in the realm of science. Some people will put that in the realm of spirituality. So it just depends on what you choose to use for your visualization, for your identification of these things, and then also just what you want to call it by name. Whenever I've dealt with, I've just because you have a different faith or a belief system doesn't mean that you can't cooperate and do the same things or achieve the same goals. And I think that's where people get a bit, they find the challenge and they find it difficult. Because for example, I consider myself to be a spiritual person. I don't have a specific religion that I follow. I'm very open to ideas and thoughts because I believe that the truth is all over the damn place. It's just all over the damn place under different names, but it's the same thing. So I believe it just repeats, again, the repeating patterns. When you look at all of the religious beliefs, a lot of them share very common ideas or practices. So whenever I am dealing with someone who's from a different faith, I don't try to dismiss or diminish or reduce what they believe or the belief system that they are connected to. I just work with it. I work within that system because that is what God does, right? If I believe in God as being this force that comes forward and presents itself as how we will accept it, then I take my cue from that and I try to use that same system when I teach people or help people to guide them. So I'm speaking to someone and they are operating mindfully from a specific ideology. Then I don't dismiss that. I don't say that's not good enough or, you need to get out of that. I just try to work within that. But then I try to add more within that system that might lead to breadcrumbs so that they start to understand things beyond that system. So I'll still work within the system they use, but then I will give them a little bit more that may not be exactly fitting to that system, but may get them to question and understand some things beyond that. That way they're not just holding into that. And if they desire to know more, then they have a path to know more. If not, it still works for them. But you work within that system. So it's like when you go to a different country and they have a different set of laws or different set of rules, you don't go and say, hey, sorry, I don't believe in your beliefs or your country or the way that you operate as a society. I'm going to change everything to what I believe because what I believe I think is better. And then you don't do that. We don't do that. For the most part, most people don't do that. We have to operate within that system. And so that's how you can cooperate with people and come together and work on stuff together, even if you don't believe in the same things. The problem is that you have people who don't understand that. You have people who believe that there is no room for diversity. There's no room for the ability to have different ideas. There's no room to be able to think something different. Everything has to be the same. It has to be under one system. And that's not the way the universe works. That's not the way God works. That's not the way Source works. Look at life. Life does not function that way. Nothing in life functions within that restriction. So why would we put ourselves within a system to operate that way? Why would we even accept a system that operates that way? Because it goes flat up against the reality of creation, the reality of life, the reality of Source, and how it's operating in all of existence. So go with the flow of how it's being presented and how it's actually being you're getting a sample of it just by paying attention to the universe around you. And so if you pay attention to the universe around you, it will teach you, it will guide you, and it will say life happens in a whole host of ways. It's not limited. So why would you want to exist in a system that is limiting when that's not what life does. That's not what the experience of God does. If you assume that, the physical universe is also part of the Creator. Meditation is a really good way to listen, to hear. Because sometimes, yesterday evening, I was watching a show with my partner, and it's a show that we watched. It's called RuPaul's Drag Race. Really funny show, really really entertaining. But on this episode of the show, there are two contestants who are participating in the competition, and one of them is a talker. Just talks and talks and talks and talks. And he was, and I think part of it was that he was just nervous or anxious, but also he doesn't really have conversations. He just talks. And so he may start a conversation where it's like, how are you doing today? I've been so tired today, and then it just turns into a one-sided conversation, and it doesn't allow for room to hear anything in response. And so through the episode, he had gotten really upset because every week several people are safe and they get to go to the back, so they don't have to worry about being either the top or the bottom of the week. They can go ahead and go to the back and hang out until the other ladies, the other drag queens, get judged and they're given feedback. So some of them will be at the top of the competition for that week. Some of them will be at the bottom of the competition, and who's ever at the bottom usually has to lip sync and compete against each other in like a performance to see who's going to win each other out. So the people who are safe, they're good, even though they're not going to get critiqued, so they're not really going to get the responses, but they also didn't do bad. They also weren't the best of the week. So they had, several of the ladies had gone ahead and they were saying, so-and-so and so, you're safe. You can go to the background, you can go to the back and you can hang out and wait for the others. And so they went to the back, and one of them, the talker, started to share feelings and I'm sad because I'm at the top. I thought it was going to be really good. I thought it was going to be number one this week. And then they broke down and started crying. And then they were talking about that and talking about that. And you could tell that all of the other contestants are like, why are you so upset? You're safe. You didn't lose. You're not at the bottom. You don't have to worry about going home this week, but you didn't do as well either, but you're still here. You're still part of this competition. But he was so caught up in his feelings that he was not hearing any of that and was just focused on the way that he felt because he wasn't number one and he wasn't the best, and he wanted to blow everyone away. And it became that kind of response became a regular thing. And one of the other contestants said to him, was like, you want our feedback. You want us to hear what you're having to say, but you're also asking for feedback, but we're not getting the opportunity to give you feedback. We're not given the opportunity to communicate with you. We're not getting the opportunity to share what we have to share with you. It's just you talking. And it was so interesting because I thought of, when I was seeing that, I kept thinking to myself, that's exactly what people do when they don't meditate. Because people who don't meditate, and meditation can be done in many ways. Meditation can be done through traditional standard practices. You can also go for a walk and meditate. I do a walking meditation here because we have such beautiful views, and sometimes at night when I'm walking at night, the stars are out and it's just a really beautiful experience. But for me, that's a form of meditation. I'm in the moment, I'm present in the moment, and I'm just paying attention to what is occurring in that moment, whether it's the experience of the stars, whether the experience of the vistas, or whether it's just the physical activity of walking, the sound of the coyotes in the distance. It's whatever. All of these different elements that help to bring it into a moment of presence and connection with the divine. It's a very beautiful experience. And that's my form of meditation. But if you want to just meditate, you can sit and just be quiet and focus on your breath and just be aware of what's happening in your thoughts. Not engage with your thoughts, not follow the train, the tracks, the path that your thoughts would have you go down. Just be aware and breathe and be present in the moment. And what ends up happening is when you begin to practice that, you start to become aware of more than just your physical body. You become aware of more than just your breathing. You become aware of more than just those thoughts. There are other things that are occurring that are so subtle and so gentle that are still a part of your experience here. But because you're not used to being that aware, you're completely missing it on a regular basis. And so when you go through your day and you are just dealing with life, going to work, having to deal with my coworkers, got kids to take care of, have to deal with my significant other, I want to date, I want my soulmate. When you're going through the day with all of that just constantly replaying in your head over and over, because it's a tape, it's like a cassette tape or a CD or an MP3. It's like it's repeatedly soundbite over and over again, the same patterns of thoughts and ideas and feelings and memories and so forth. Then all you're doing is just being aware of that. And so you become the byproduct of that thinking, of all of those thoughts, of all of that consistent energy cycling back and forth over and over and over again. But when you meditate, And you take a moment and you breathe and you just allow yourself to kind of be in the present moment. You become aware of something beyond just that. That you kind of put to the side for a moment, and then you start to become aware of other things. And as you become aware of other things, what you start to realize is that you aren't those thoughts. You aren't those things that are in your head. You're that thing that is aware of it, but you're not those things. Those are just the things that you repeat to yourself, and then you become a part of that because that's who you think you are, but it's just a thought. So when you meditate, you are getting acclimated and used to paying attention to what's happening besides just those thoughts, paying attention to what's happening besides just your breathing, paying attention to what's happening besides just the normal everyday human experience. And in doing so, you start to notice things that you didn't notice before. Some people have more psychic experiences. Some people start having more spiritual experiences. Some people start having things happening that they had never had happen before. And the reason why is because you opened up to it. You made yourself available to it. You allowed yourself to experience, to know, to be aware of more. And that's what's happened. So that's why I think meditation is important, but you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours meditating a day. I would suggest 5 to 10 minutes a day just to give yourself a chance to get used to tuning out of the regular everyday stuff and tuning into those subtle variations of experience and of life that you're completely disconnected with because you're so caught up in the everyday stuff. And so I would suggest this 5 or 10 minutes a day. And if you do it on a regular basis, you start to teach yourself and condition yourself to be more aware and more sensitive and more conscious of what's happening. It's just like a runner. A runner, if a person's like, I want to compete in a marathon, so I'm going to run 5 hours one day and I'll be ready for the marathon. It's probably not enough because it's a one-time thing and you have to condition yourself. You conditioned yourself into operating from a state of mental functioning focused on the thought patterns you're stuck with. And that happened over time. So you have to recondition yourself into being open and sensitive and aware of this reality of the universe, of things that you're not normally used to. And so you have to do it on a regular basis. So it would be better to do 5 to 10 minutes a day, several days in a row, 2 months in a row, than to do, 1 or 2 days in a 2-month period where you're meditating for 5 or 10 hours a day. It's ineffective. It's not something that you're consistently doing or working towards. So it's more important to do it on a regular basis and consistently than to do it once or twice here and there. It's the same thing with psychic ability. I always tell my students, I would rather you every week have like 5 or 10 minutes working and practicing and using your psychic ability than to have like one great psychic hit in like a year, but then you do nothing else throughout the year. I would rather you have smaller moments where you're practicing and tuning in and you're picking up on things than to have one event a year that you blow yourself away, but that's it. It's just the once a year. You're not going to have that consistency. You're not going to develop yourself. You're not going to have that skill set. It's the same thing with consciousness and awareness. You have to condition yourself and practice the skill set of consciousness. Yeah, so Sarah Baker, God knew who I would be, so the thought then is he also knew I would question everything, but I don't feel it condemns me. I feel accepted. Science and religion are so linked. What I would say is take it further than that, Sarah, and I would say you knew that you would question everything if you limited yourself within a specific personality and set of life circumstances. So you knew that if you gave yourself a set of human conditions or circumstances, you gave yourself a unique perspective that would form from those experiences, and then you coalesced into this personality as Sarah, you knew that in that form and in that state and from that point, you would question things, and you would wonder, and you would choose to understand and to explore and to expand. And so you, as God, would set to yourself, I'm going to give myself amnesia. I'm going to kind of block out some things because I really want to have an understanding and an experience and witness myself from this perspective. You know, it's no different than like people who compete in competitions. You know, they want to experience themselves going through that. They want to put themselves through that experience, that challenge, because they want to see what they can do. And so you as God, you condense yourself into this persona that you are today, and then you've questioned yourself, and you're like, you know, I feel accepted by it. I feel accepted by it. I don't feel it condemns me. Well, of course not. It's you. You made the decision to actually not be that big version of yourself right now. You decided to be this version of yourself because this is what you're here for. This is what you're trying to experience. This is the witnessing part of creation. This is, you know, there's the conceptualization of creation of the universe, and then there's the witnessing, the experiencing of it. We are the witnessing, the experience of it. There's the conceptualization of it, and that's when we think of God, that's the entirety of all of that. But we're the witnessing part of it. We're the ones that condensed ourselves and gave ourselves this unique experience. And it's just us experiencing ourselves as us in different forms and in different parts and in different perspectives. So that's why whenever like I think of God, I don't think of like a condemning or controlling or a person separate from me, you know, or a thing separate from me. I consider it as part of me that I just don't have full awareness and understanding of because I'm limited in this perspective, but I still choose to understand as much as I can. And so I don't ever think of it as a judging or even as a preferring thing in any way, shape, or form. I just think of it as myself in a grander version, in a grander form. It's dependent, yeah. Gonzo 23. It's dependent on you, honestly. I mean, we are designed to understand and to experience. We're designed to experience, to be. And so what you choose to do with that is your choice. You have free will. You can choose to do whatever you want. Even if you hypothetically came in with a soul plan, once you're down here, once you're in the play, once you're in the part and the movie, the camera's rolling, at that point you can improv. You can do whatever you want. You may completely get away from what you originally set up for yourself, but you can improv, or you can go along with the path and get into the flow of things. But we are evolving beings. We're designed to evolve. If you look at nature, nature is constantly evolving. There are some forms of nature that have evolved to such efficient, effective states that they remain to some extent unchanged, even over long periods of time. But for the most part, all of nature, all of life is constantly evolving, constantly expanding, constantly finding ways of existing. And so we are definitely designed to evolve and to grow past. And that is actually the state of the world today. You know, if you look at the numbers, a lot of people are moving away from organized religion because they have not been given what they expected from it. They did not receive what was promised. So they're moving more into spirituality. They're moving more into philosophy and theology. So they're moving more towards understanding things from a different perspective and practicing their relationship with the divine in a different way than just using organized religion. Nothing wrong with organized religion, but you know, if you want to experience something, you go to the grand library in town. You don't go to the little bookshop in a village, because there's limitations to what that's going to offer you. If you go to the big bookstore or the big library in the city, there's a lot more available to you. But that doesn't mean you should stop and not exist or no longer value the little bookshop in the village, because it has something to offer, even if it's limited in its own form, because the bigger library in the city is also limited in its form either way as well. It's just got more that's available. That's all. So yeah, to answer your question, we are definitely designed to evolve, because all of life is designed to evolve. Take your cue from life. Okay, God, are we designed to evolve, to grow, to develop? Yeah, well, look at life. Does life do this? Is this the way of the world? It is. And so you can take your cue from that. And so the answer is in the things that we see all around us. But if you ask the question, you will be given an answer in one way, shape, or form. Life, universe, God will find a way to answer that question in more than one way. So that way you can really grasp that and learn that fully, and then you can integrate that information and gain the wisdom that comes from it. I see the questions here. Let's go here. I think that's most of the questions. Yep, that was it. I think that's all of the spiritual questions. So, all right, my loves, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you showing up and joining me for the Sunday sermon. I love you all, and I will see you next Sunday for our next sermon, okay? Bye.